to In The Cann with Carmella Cann. We are putting out an exclusive story and stepping out of my normal podcast schedule, which is on the first and third Tuesday of the month. I recently found out of a situation that is very pressing, and I wanted to share it with all of you. And I felt the need to highlight it and, and kind of shed some light on it while this is going on. I have a friend of mine on with me, Dakarai Larriett, who recently was the, in a way, victim of racial and gay profiling. And he recently filed in the state of Michigan a civil suit against the two troopers that falsely arrested him under, and I'll let him tell the story better than me. So welcome, Dakarai.
Thank you so much for having
me. So sorry you're going through this. I know when I got your email and I opened it up and I saw like your story, is like, oh my God. Because sometimes we read about these things, but we don't, sometimes we don't know someone, and to actually know someone or we do and just are not aware sometimes of it. But the fact that, I knew you, and then as I was reading, I was just, horrified and really thought this to be important to shed some light on. So you were in Michigan, is that correct, on April 10th?
That's correct.
And you were pulled over by two state troopers?
That's correct.
And they alleged that you had basically had moving violation in the car, had like, was it speeding or a light? Was that it?
So the allegation was that I was not stopping at blinking red lights, which is false.
Okay, great. And so tell us the story.
Sure. So it was April 10th, 2024, and I was simply driving while black and gay in Southwest Michigan in a town called Benton Harbor. And I was dropping off my buddy who works in healthcare and starts work pretty early in the morning. So we were on the road at 3 a.m. And as we were basically pulling up to his house, we received a notification that we were being pulled over when the emergency lights came on. And from there, it just escalated from an allegation that I was running red lights to a 30-minute sobriety test in the cold, and I was wearing my pajamas, to ultimately the troopers deciding not only was I driving under the influence of alcohol, but also that I was under the influence of drugs, and specifically marijuana.
Now, is there, I saw based on the filing in civil courts that they did testing and everything came back that there was no evidence of drugs or alcohol, correct?
Correct. So what really makes the story so shocking, Carmella, is, again, this can happen to any of us. And I want your audience, in particular, a gay audience, to understand when you're partying and having a great time in Chicago, this happened 90 miles away from Chicago. When you're having a great summer trip out to Saugatuck and you're hanging out on the lake, this happened 45 minutes from there. So you have to pass through this town to get to those places if you're commuting from the Midwest or between Chicago. This impacts all of us. So yes, 100%. I don't use drugs, and I certainly don't drink and drive. So that very night, I was handcuffed, arrested, taken to the hospital for a blood test, and I immediately passed the blood test with 0 alcohol in my system, which I attested to the entire night. And that was still not enough.
And they still, even though there was no tangible evidence of alcohol being in your system or of drugs, I saw in the report that one of the officers says in his professional opinion versus, now we are going between facts and opinion here.
Yeah.
Someone who acts in an authority figure who is now bypassing any tangible evidence of this and saying that it's in his opinion that he thought you were under the influence. Am I correct to what
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
interpreted?
It was so much junk science throughout the night. I truly, as someone who was sober, wanted a breathalyzer and it was never offered to me. And I think in hindsight, they liked the idea of taking me to the hospital for the blood draw because then they could say, we need 2 weeks to get your drug test results back because those are not instantaneous, which is really a shame. So it was all about humiliation and dragging out the process. And yes, it was not at all scientific. In fact, Officer Kanyuh, who was kind of the ringleader, the head bad cop, if you will, said that the sobriety test, the one I subjected myself to in the cold for 30 minutes, was not pass or fail. But again, it was up to his interpretation.
And it's awful because, police officers are, or law enforcement in general, is given an authority position to, where at a very young age, I know I was trained at the age of 4 and 5, where my family would go, like, if you're in trouble, you're supposed to go to a police officer. And then when you hear people abusing this type of authority, when we've been taught at an early age that they're actually supposed to help us, it is sad and awful. And I'm so sorry this happened to you. And, and I'm not trying to put down all police officers, because I actually have friends who are officers and who work in law enforcement and here in New York, and are, I do believe got into this profession for the right reasons and want to help people. And it's sad when we hear of someone who has abused their authority and situation, and really created trauma for someone, because when you're in that situation of humiliation and feeling a sense of powerlessness, and to some extent, and they really get to call the shots, because, as I was reading, like, you were actually taken and booked
Mhm.
and had to wait to go to bail. Am I correct?
Oh, yes. So, you know, I was at the hospital texting one of my good friends who lives across from the hospital that I'm about to walk out of here because I'm 100% sober and I don't do drugs. So I'm going to test out. And little did I know, passing the blood test for alcohol was not enough for these troopers. They handcuffed me and took me right onto the jail and said that they needed to get the drug test results back after 2 weeks. So I went into the jail. And when you go to the jail, it's like going through TSA. You have to get a body scan and they just confirm that you don't have any contraband on you. And they noticed what they called an anomaly in my stomach, and they just put me through the machine again and again and again. So I presume I was being exposed to X-ray excessively throughout the night. And they had this kind of junior person who didn't quite know what he was doing, and they just kept seeing this anomaly. Finally, they called on a technician who understood the machine, seemed much more seasoned, and she just kind of squints and looks at it, and she goes, "Oh, he has gas in his stomach. No big deal." While all of this is happening, I'm going back and forth between the cell and I'm being scanned. Trooper Kanya very rudely yells at me, "That looks like a bag of drugs. Confess now, or you're going to face a trafficking charge too." And throughout that evening, I'm going back and forth, back and forth. And as I told you, we ultimately realized I had gas, and who wouldn't, with the nervousness of being stalked and harassed all night. And I asked to use the restroom. So Trooper Kenya led me over to the restroom. And it's just like this public area. I've just never seen anything like this before. I've never been arrested before. I'm a corporate executive. Like, this is not a world I'm used to. And he leads me to the area where I'm supposed to use the restroom. And behind me again yells, "Don't flush!" It was just the most disgusting, degrading experience of my life. And I think before we joined the call, Carmela, we were talking about the importance of diversity and inclusion when you don't have diversity and inclusion. So when he came up to the car, he insulted my passenger and me, talking about how he smelled fruity, fruity, something's fruity in here. And as a gay person, we know, especially gay men, we know that is very offensive. You know,
It's a microaggression. I
it
mean, it's
absolutely is.
completely. overt. It's not even. It's an overt microaggression.
And when
And
you
completely filled with bias, unprofessional rhetoric.
yes, and when you think about it, I passed all of their drug tests, all of their alcohol tests, with zero alcohol in my system. Not one drink, zero. So, what was this fruity thing that he smelled? He made it up because he saw two gay black men driving through the town.
I haven't done my own personal research, but out of curiosity, do you know what um, diversity statistics are in terms of this police station, or in terms of how many, white versus black officers work there and don't work there? And
I don't know those stats, and I wonder if they would release them. This would be the Niles Post station of the Michigan State Police. But I'll tell you this, Carmela, they have a lot of work to do again with diversity and inclusion. And not only were we basically treated with homophobia, we also experienced racism. So when I got the dash cam and the body cam, which took 5.5 months of consistent follow up, I was shocked to hear they were making fun of my beautiful African name, calling me Dakarai. And Dakarai, are you drinking daiquiris? My name is Dakarai. It's a beautiful African name. And both officers. So it's really interesting. Like, this is 2024. Racism isn't just black, white, black. We had an African American cop who was fully in on this whole activity. And by the way, he has a very beautiful African name too. So it's very complex what happened that evening. And at the end of the day, I believe that Officer Okaiye, the black officer with the African name, was just propping up a white supremacist organization for his personal career and maybe making a quota. And Kanyuh has a long history of homophobia, racism, misogyny, transphobia. I mean, every ism you can think of, we were able to find his social media and going back into like the 20 teens of posts that were offensive. And thank goodness we scraped all of those posts and they're included in our lawsuit.
yeah, I mean, um, as someone who studied industrial psychology, one of the things is vetting people and vetting the right people for the jobs.
Yes.
And unfortunately, um, you know, I'm not about defunding the police, but I am about finding the right people for these types of jobs and having a correct vetting process, and also the correct training, and actually having training that is about eliminating bias and educating people that everyone has bias to some extent, and bringing that to the surface so people are aware of themselves, have some self-awareness in these situations, as a tool to start, so we stop hearing these type of stories. I'm not gonna, sit there and criticize police, but unfortunately, there are too many of these stories where people abuse their position of authority, and they are given a role. And one of the reasons we're sometimes critical on them, it's not because we want to be critical, but they are given a position of authority, of trust from the public to act in a way that is to help the public, not to um, torture someone.
Yes.
And that's why people get so upset over these stories, is because, as servants of the public, when we hear that they're abusing their position of authority, creating harm, like you said, the humiliation, the having to be put through this, and having no power in the situation of being able to walk away,
Yes.
because now you have to go through the system, unfortunately,
Mhm.
even if you're innocent, and having to almost prove that you're innocent.
Yes.
It's like you are guilty first before
Yes.
innocent. And it's supposed to be the other way around. It's supposed to be you're innocent until proven guilty. And it's awful. And again, I'm not someone, because I'm also very pro law enforcement and pro policing, but the correct policing.
Yes.
And it's about, my personal opinion, and is about having a correct vetting process. And I don't feel like I don't know exactly what the Michigan state trooper vetting process is, but like you said, there was evidence of past social media posts. I don't know if they use examinations or what it is that they do to vet these police officers. Because sometimes a test is not going to capture all of these things in it. Or these tests need to be more than just a paper and pencil type of test, and actually have a psychological component, or components that are also measuring bias, not just measuring whether or not you say the right thing in a specific time. So reassessing these, the way we vet police is important,
Mm-hmm.
and also being able to put more money into training and awareness. And maybe instead of 6 months of training, they get 9 months of training. And we add some psychological component to it about, eliminating bias. And like you said, some of diversity inclusion type of philosophies towards it, will help. But it's awful. I'm glad that you are standing up, because like you said, you are someone who has, a professional person who never had, and imagine someone who doesn't have your background, who's put in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have the experience and social capital to some extent to bring light to this, and you are someone who's empowered already. But there are a lot of people out there who feel victimized to this, who don't feel empowered or scared or feel like they're fighting a losing battle, who just walk away and the story never gets told.
Right. Right. And I'm committed to really fighting for everyone else behind me here. When I sat in that jail that night, I knew that there were other innocent people in there, and I just couldn't live with that. And I decided that this is a fight that I'm ready to fight, to the end. And this first step is, frankly, the call to action is we've got to get troopers Kanyuh and Okaiye terminated immediately for cause. They are sitting on taxpayer funds right now. I can't even get an answer as to whether they are suspended. Are they actively on the beat? But I can say this: I'm getting people reaching out to me every single day. And one individual says that she was roughed up by Okaiye as recently as September 3rd. So last month, despite my lawyer filing a complaint in June, and despite them obviously knowing that they put me through this whole ordeal and I was negative on every single test, they're out and about on the beat.
And like you said, there was actually camera footage of this stuff being recorded, correct?
Yes, and
And
thank you
they
for
weren't even
bringing that up.
suspended for the just alone the unprofessionalism of saying, the microaggression words that they used. That, to me, there should be a policy in place for the unprofessionalism of that rhetoric to get you suspended alone.
Yes, but it
That
goes
that
on beyond
rhetoric
that.
is not tolerated in a professional situation.
Yes, and that's what's so interesting is we thought this was, frankly, driving while black, discrimination in America, which is something that we're not getting past anytime soon. Then it expanded as we got the dash and body cam video. So we fought, as I mentioned, for 5 months to get this evidence, including my drug test, right? We're combing through my lawyer, my associates, every angle, every camera. So we have 2 body cams, we have 2 dash cams. So imagine you're watching it like a theater in the round. And I farmed out all the videos to my associates, as mentioned. Within 2 hours of that, I received a panic call from one of my closest confidants. And he said, Dakarai, I need you to open up video file George Kanyuh. That was the lead bad cop. And I need you to go to 3:25 a.m. And what you see is Trooper Kanyuh rifling through his squad car. Rifling through. He's looking at the side compartment of his car door. He's digging under the back seat of the car. He's digging through his trunk. He's looking through boxes. What is he looking for? Then Trooper Okaiye comes around to the back of the car after 2 minutes of digging and goes, drugs? Trooper Kanyuh responds, I don't think I have any. I had a stash in here. I don't know where it's at. He's going to
And this is caught on
refuse.
camera. I mean, this is is tangible. This is not even something that is overheard. This isn't something that it's he said, she said. This is actual tangible footage.
Correct. And just to wrap it up, Kanyuh finally goes, he's going to refuse anyway. And we all know what that means. I would refuse an illegal search of my car. And then finally, they just kind of resolve, we'll give him weed and alcohol. And then that's when I ultimately get arrested and taken to the hospital. So they fully intended to plant narcotics in my vehicle. They couldn't find the narcotics. So then they say, yeah, he's going to refuse it anyway. Let's just give him a lesser charge. They wanted a bigger charge. They wanted a drug charge. Um, and when I saw that, I nearly broke down because, of course, I lived the experience. It was traumatic. I got over it. But when I saw the video and how close I was to having my life ruined, to get, imagine I could still be in that jail.
No, that yeah.
I could still be in that jail. I could have a charge on me. I could be spending thousands of dollars defending a bogus charge. My life would have been ruined if they were able to find that stash that they were looking for from 3:25 a.m. to 3:28 a.m. And I encourage everyone, go to your YouTube, go to TikTok, go to Instagram. You can watch the full 54-minute video. You can watch iterations that are more kind of sound bites, but 3:25 to 3:28 a.m. is the pivotal moment.
And were they suspended? Just out of curiosity, did anything happen during this period? Was there an investigation done by the department? Any of these types of?
Allegedly, there's an internal investigation, but as far as I know, they're still employed. I can't get a straight answer when I call the police department. I've engaged the governor. I'm in contact with the governor's office. It's just a big bureaucratic mess. No one feels that they have the jurisdiction or the authority to act, which means that the police run out the clock and they protect their own.
And that's sad. Fortunately, it is a bureaucracy, sometimes the system, and we don't get the answers right away, and it drags on. And in the meantime, they're still out there and could create harm to someone else.
Yes.
Because, again, I'm not going to say you're guilty. You still have a chance to put you innocent. But in this type of situation where someone has abused their authority, they at least need to be taken off the street at that point while an investigation is being conducted.
I fully understand the legal process and the presumption of innocence, but I was not given that courtesy. And I'm sorry, America has seen the video, they've heard the video. They tried to implicate me on a drug crime 3 times that evening, actually. One was the actual charge that I received, driving under the influence of drugs, which obviously came back false with their own test. Of course, the drug plant that they attempted to do, but couldn't find the drugs or the stash. And then the third incident, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, was when they took me to the jail and accused me of ingesting a bag of drugs and smuggling them into the jail. So they were on a mission, Carmella, to implicate me in a drug-related charge that evening.
So this is beyond even a sense of racial profiling or bigotry. This goes into like total abuse of authority and even trying to set you up for something that you didn't even do.
Exactly.
Which is repulsing on so many levels. And traumatic, like you said. If you do not have the resources or the social capital, like you said, you could be stuck fighting a charge. For a very long time that can actually have major impacts on your life.
Yes.
Long-lasting impacts. And, it's in a way great that we have these cameras because or else it'd be he said, she said. It'd be your story versus theirs. Even with tangible evidence like this, that we actually have footage to look at, you're still having to fight that and defend it.
Oh, but Carmella, it gets worse. They're tampering with evidence. So we were not supposed to get this fairly unredacted video. Somebody probably is terminated or in a ditch now for this video coming through to my lawyer and me. They've basically dubbed and manipulated the body and dash cam. So I've run multiple forensic analysis on the videos that they did release to us through the Freedom of Information Act. And there are gaps in the videos. There are periods where the audio completely drops. And one notable piece is for Officer Okaiye when he's speaking to the passenger, my friend, his audio drops for a full minute. And I already knew what they were talking about, and it was very suspicious to me that it would drop at that 1 minute. So, as you can imagine, it was some very illegal behavior happening. And despite,
Yeah, I just want to clear. So I want to, but moving forward, I just want to clear something up for my better understanding and for my audiences. So you put a foil in the Freedom of Information Act to
yes,
get uh, the videos released to you.
yes,
And you're saying that when you got then released through the process, that they had been tampered with. That the am I correct to assume
oh,
that or no?
without a doubt, every single one is redacted with
So
no
we
real.
can't even trust the Freedom of Information Act to actually get the right evidence.
No, no.
Evidence can still be tampered even if you foil something.
Yes. So I think ultimately the way we get clean files, if we ever get clean files, is going to be through the lawsuit and through the discovery process. But they completely, um, really just bastardized
And
the
and
FOIA
people could
process.
lie and say, well, put in a Freedom of Information Act and get the facts, and you're technically getting the facts that are not even the
They're
facts
filtered.
because
They're filtered.
they have been tampered with.
They're tampered and filtered, and it's just so obvious. And I guess the last thing I'll leave you with is it drops for one full minute when Okaiye is speaking to the passenger. Now, we're friends. We've already discussed, like literally the day of April 10th, what did he ask you? What were you asked, etc. So I already knew what the discussion was about. Despite the fact that the license plate was my name, Dakarai, despite the fact that I provided ID, registration, and anything they asked for, they still did not believe the car belonged to me. And if you listen to the video, they are obsessed with my car. The whole chase starts with Trooper Kanyuh going, "Nice ride." And throughout the night, he's commenting on the Cadillac. And one point, he asked me, "What's your highest level of education?" And I respond, "Master's. I went to NYU." And he goes, "Oh, well, I can tell because of the Cadillac." So they were obsessed with my car. At the end of the day, like, these two loser cops probably were just jealous. They couldn't afford the same car.
I mean, whatever it is. I mean, first of all, I'm so sorry you had to go through this because I know that this is traumatic and this has long lasting effects outside of this later on because here you're in a situation where someone's abused their authority, abused their power, put you through a process where you had to prove yourself innocent. You were treated as guilty beforehand with no tangible evidence.
Right.
Where you had to actually refute that. I mean, I'm almost stunned with words because it's like, and then that you actually put in a Freedom of Information Act and got the wrong information back.
Yeah.
And the government itself wasn't something you can trust on.
It's pretty shocking, Carmella, just how many things have gone wrong, but so many things went right, and I'm so thankful. For example, that my friend was there. We pulled up to his house. He parked my car for me. Again, the troopers wanted to get into my car to plant drugs, and they multiple times in the night offered to park my car for me. So thank goodness my friend could guard the car and keep them out of it throughout the night while I was doing the sobriety test, and he could park the car for me. And also, just the fact that they couldn't find their stash. They looked for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, that's a long time to dig through your car.
And it's caught on camera.
Yes, and I want to put something else out there. There's a troll named Tommy or Thomas that is commenting on all of my social media and trying to spin this narrative that they were really looking for a breathalyzer test to give me. Okay. Why would I refuse a breathalyzer test if I'm sober and I've attested to that throughout the night? Number two, why on earth would a breathalyzer test be buried under your seat, in the back trunk, or in the side compartment? Breathalyzer straws come in a big package so that you can use them in bulk. Because if you're a night beat cop, how do you even go to your job without breathalyzer straws? Why would it be buried in the back of your car? And then I guess the last point is Michigan is an implied consent state. So you cannot refuse a breathalyzer. Like, it's not an optional thing. If you do, I mean, okay, you can refuse anything, right? You're going to lose your license and you're going to get points. So nobody does that. And then the last point, I guess, the last point is I submitted to a blood test. That's super invasive. You took me to the hospital in handcuffs. So it's completely incredulous that I would not accept a breathalyzer being 100% sober. And they were 100% looking for drugs to plant in my car and to ruin my life. And we will be having a press conference in Benton Harbor, exactly where they stalked me. And that'll be on October 30th at 1 p.m. And we want everybody to come out and hold these two troopers, George Kanyuh and Matthew Okaiye, accountable.
And how can we support you in this process? You know, I'm still in some sense disbelief, and it's the story itself is awful when you hear of someone who's abused their authority, and um, I don't even have words. I have to be honest. It's
It's
hard to even come up with words
oh,
when you hear this story.
it's mind-boggling. Like, when I explain the story to people, when I explain, for example, that I, for example, have to get a gun. And I'm enjoying my Second Amendment rights, but it was not something I felt like I had to do. I have to get a gun. So my life has changed. It's completely changed 180 degrees since this happened. And I will defend myself both in the courts and on the streets if I need to. But what I can use help on is spreading the word. So go to my YouTube, go to my TikTok, go to my Instagram. Everything's going to be under Dakarai Larriett. Spread the word, share, like, and comment. We've got to create noise. And if you go to my social media, you'll also find a change.org petition to have those two troopers, George Kanyuh and Matthew Okaiye, terminated immediately.
Yeah, and this is why bringing this into the public space is necessary, and we need to elevate this because sometimes that's the only way to where people are held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And also putting pressure on these politicians who, because this is top down that they work. These people who are appointed to run these police houses are usually appointed by either a governor or a mayor or some politician who's been voted in by the public, and and holding them accountable for their employees because that's who they're working for. And like you said, on taxpayer money. There's almost no words I have. It's almost disbelief that not only was there bias in the situation of racism and homophobia, but then someone tried to set you up for something you didn't even do and frame you, abuse their authority. And then when you even put in a Freedom of Information Act, you got the wrong information from the government that had nothing to do with those police officers. I'm sure another unit that monitors that.
Yeah, and now they're intimidating. And now it's transitioned from, they say the cover was worse than the crime. Now it's transitioned to them intimidating me on all of my social media, threatening me, saying I need to take what I've said back. I'm not taking anything back. The video speaks for itself. And let's just say that we didn't even have the video, like the disrespect. These people should not be wearing the uniform.
No, I'm very proud of you that because it takes a lot of strength, emotion to come forward with this type of story and to also stand up for yourself and kind of say, no, this is not acceptable or tolerable, and I'm going to hold you accountable for what you did. And again, I'm someone who is, I have friends who are police officers, and I'm not someone who is into the defund the police type of rhetoric, but we do have to improve policing.
Yeah.
And we have to improve how we vet people. We have to improve training, and really look at those aspects, and get it from the very beginning before it turns into this.
Yes.
And unfortunately, you raising this awareness and shedding light on it, hopefully brings it into the public space where people are just aware. Because when you even tell me that the Freedom of Information Act was tampered with, I'm almost like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like we're supposed to trust this.
Yeah.
We're told like you can put in this application and trust what we're going to give you. And you're saying that even that's not managed by these two officers, managed by another, was tampered.
Well, the records department
It's
is
just
corrupt as well. So the question is, how high does this go? But I have some ideas, Carmella. I'll close with that. We've got to address this with a federal minimum standard around policing. So I like to call it the Motorist Bill of Rights. So what are your rights when you are stopped anywhere, any state, Michigan, New York, etc.? And like I mentioned, like your audience is probably New York based, but we travel to Chicago. We go to market days. Like, let's say you decided to go out to Lake Michigan Beach. Like, you're in the vicinity. Michigan State Police troopers have full authority across the state of Michigan. Okay, if it happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. Okay, but we need a bill of rights around what we can expect at a traffic stop. What's a fair test? What's not? How do you address the passenger or the driver? Like, I didn't know that I could refuse the sobriety test at 3 a.m. I certainly would have if I had known that. He told me, I need you to get out of the car. I followed instructions. Like you, I was taught to respect the police. And then,
I mean, I was even taught that you go to them for help. So
yes.
when you become a victim
Yes.
of the very people that you were taught at a young age that you're supposed to turn to, that's just tragic on so many levels. Because, like, when you're in trouble, you're taught, like, I'm supposed to call law enforcement. They're supposed to be on my side and to protect me. So when you become victimized by the people that were set up to protect you, it's almost like your parents who are there to protect you and then abuse you. I hate to say, I use that as an analogy, but that is kind of the situation.
Right.
The very people who are hired by society to protect you and to be there for you are the ones victimizing you.
Right.
And this is, I think, what falls negatively with the public, that people and sometimes the reason that we're very critical about them is because they are given so much authority and are given so much power.
Yeah.
And when you see people abuse that, it really leaves a negative taste in people's mouths.
Yes.
And it really is. And when I read your email, I was just like, oh my God, he was accused of what? Because I've known you for so long. And I was like, this is not Dakarai. I'm like, there's no way. I was like in total shock. And again, also when you know someone, it really changes the element of reading it of someone you don't know versus when you actually know someone in this situation. Where you can actually put a face, a relationship behind it, and know that, like, this is not this person, because my interaction, my experience, this is not what this person is being accused of, because I just know this person. Does that make sense? Yeah. It just you're left, like I said, I'm with words to the story to some extent, which is one of the reasons I wanted to bring this to my podcast and kind of elevate it and shed some light on it, because I do believe it deserves the light. I really wish you the best of luck with this. I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I'm sure just the trauma alone, but also I want to condemn I want to employ your courage of coming forward and actually standing up for yourself, because if more people do that, this will make people think twice the next time.
Yes.
Once we start empowering ourselves that, no, we are not going to tolerate this. No, we are going to stand up, and you will be held accountable when you don't do your job correctly. Does start to change the mechanism a little bit.
Yes.
And hopefully, more people are just going to realize that, my opinion is the vetting and the training specifically. Like you said, there was evidence out there that these people have made social media posts of homophobia, transphobia, and racism, and why were they even hired with that out there?
Exactly.
Why was an investigation not done correctly,
Yes.
or better vetting here? So I do wish you the best of luck with all this. Again, I'm so sorry you're going through this. We definitely love to have you back on as a follow up and
I
kind
love
of,
that.
see where this is going. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Carmella.
And like Dakarai said, please feel free to share his social media posting. You said that they can find you on, is it Facebook?
Every
What are some of the social
platform.
media?
We're on
Every
every
platform.
platform as Dakarai Larriett, and please reach out. I also ask if you've had any negative experiences with Michigan State Police, and in particular with these two troopers, George Kanyuh and Matthew Okaiye. Please reach out to me. We know that this is not the first time they did this.
Thank you again, Dakarai. And
Thank
again,
you.
we're wishing you the best. And I'm proud of you that you're actually, sticking up for yourself and kind of saying, no, this is not tolerable. And because there are people out there who may not be have the same self esteem or have the same self empowerment, have the same resources, and be able to do what you're doing. So we're wishing you the best. We'd love to have you back on and have a follow up on this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in with In The Cann with Carmella Cann. And we will see you next week for our actual episode on the first of the month. Thanks again.